Thank you very much for being here. And I wouldn't be long on that. Last year, when we first started this program, I introduced Dr. Hussein, and I said, you should Google him. Do you remember, Doctor?
I have short memory, but if you say so.
And then I still invite you to Google him. There is a tremendous CV behind this gentleman, and you should have done that before, but you've also received a paper yesterday telling you, so that would have given you the chance to prepare some questions, if at all possible. Climate Communicators Network meeting 2017 is quite instrumental. You are meeting here with each other almost from 10 different countries in the region. The very interesting thing about climate change as a challenge is that it goes beyond our boundaries and our borders. This is something that we all share. This is something that threatens us all. It's therefore why we should all collaborate. It's a new space for dialogue, and it's a new space that where we should all interact and take our globe to a better level, and I believe that we are still learning how to do that. I wouldn't be long, but I would also give the word to my director to welcome you once again, and then you will have the presentation from Dr. Hussein. Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much, Dr. Hussein.
Thank you. Yeah, there is no need. I think I welcomed you twice already. But again, welcome this morning. I hope you had a good night. And as I said yesterday, we are really looking forward to the positive energy that you have created and that you expressed, and to have that further enrich us during the day. And looking very much forward to Dr. Hussein's presentation.
Thank you very much. Can I have a mic?
Yes, you can.
Thank you very much. Usually I turn off my mobile phones before I start, so I don't bother you with all the ringing. I'm not an important man, but it's just a practice that I learned. I would like very much to thank Peter for inviting me to talk to you today, a group of experts that I'm really privileged to speak with you on issues that related to the media. Thank you, Reed, for the introduction. I remember, but don't tell anybody. He's a good friend of the Adham Center for Television, of digital and television journalism. And we are engaged in so many activities that somehow cover the area of digital media with regard to the environment, with specific reference to the environment, to make sure. Let's start by talking about issues that has to do with media coverage of the environment. There are main issues that I think of concern to all of us. You know, is it really with the public awareness of climate change is at the point when we like it to be? I don't think so. And I think that you don't think so, too. So over here, there are some efforts that were done in the past few years that actually, I would say, an improvement of the media coverage. But this improvement should be better. Why? Because actually the start of the coverage was in the mid-80s. So with regard to the ICT revolution and the introduction of the internet in the 90s and the social media in the new millennium, you know, I thought that this is going to be something much better than what it is now. So I think the level of awareness of the public of climate change is really poor. And that's why people like you must have a mission. And this mission is to address the climate change whenever it's possible, with whatever group, because this is what is needed at this particular point of time. Then the problem was audience. We have problems with, there are different audience in different parts of the world, and with different perception, different retention, and different exposures, of course. Even in the same group, if we agree that, all of us are exposed to a specific article on climate change, or a program, or a public awareness campaign, or a PSA, we are not going to select the same article or select the same PSA. And if we do, we have different perceptions, even as experts. So our perception differ. So again, exposure, and this is tied up with something called availability. We think that things are available, are accessible. No, it's not right. Things, so even if we've done it, but we must have an impact. This is, people will have the time to read it, or watch it, or listen to it, and have an impact on people, so that people will react accordingly. Okay? This is interesting, because with different exposure, different perception, and different retention, retention is important. Why it's important? Because we recall what we would like to recall. So if the product itself that we present through the media does not have appeal to the target audience and those who are acting as general audiences, then they are not going to remember, and therefore this retention is going to affect their behavior of not really influencing others or expressing their ideas through different venues or different media. An audience do not have attention unless it is with specific frame of reference, or frames in general. So what is the level of attention? We have different level of attention. Are you all giving me the same level of attention? No, you're not. There are A level of attention, B level of attention, when you are consuming media products. So there are level A attention, level B attention, level C attention, level D attention, and attention defined as people cannot help themselves kind of audience, meaning that, I select as the official or the father of the household the channel that you're watching, and therefore you have no interest because you are from a different age group with specific preferences. Therefore, you are trying to avoid the messages that are coming through the media, which I selected for you. But even though you're still processing the messages that is coming, even if you are engaged of reading something else, like Walid now, can't help himself, a kind of viewer. All right? So do you remember what I said?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So he's giving me attention, although he was reading something else. He's proving the point. And then audience media menu is wide, and climate change is not a priority for the audience. Meaning what? I had breakfast today at the hotel. I saw many of you. Do you remember the menu was offered to us? Do you remember the menu? Okay, the menu of the media is thousands, much more than the menu you have seen. So the media products is different, and it's coming in waves, and we're consuming it based on our frame of reference. What is your frame of reference? What is your frame of reference? The frame of reference is usually the first 20 years of your life, where your family, your parents, your school, these are formed of a frame of reference so that you can consume things accordingly. Okay? So usually people say, frame of reference, we need to study this more. I said, yes, of course, we study it all the time because they change, just like mood. But there is basic core for it. So over here, the menu, we have so many media products that we consume every day. How many newspapers? How many electronic newspapers? How many television channels? How many radio channels? How many billboards? You know, incredible amount of menu that we're consuming. So is climate change coverage of the media is a priority for the audience? Answer me, please. Yes? No? I don't know is a good answer too. It's a priority for you? Is climate change products, media products coming to you, is a priority for you? You wait for it? Give me an honest answer, please. Yes? No? I heard one yes. But what is a yes? What is the one yes? What is the one yes? Yes. So you yeah.
Covering the environment issue, so it depends actually.
So you wait for it.
Now the awareness is different than before. Yani the people now.
No, I'm not debating this point.
Yeah, I know, but it's a priority now because the people they start talking about it. But before, yes, we had a lot of these challenges.
I'm not debating this point too.
Okay.
But it's not a priority. Is it a priority for the people?
Yeah, now. Most of them, but not all of them.
Well, I respect this opinion, but I tend to differ from your view.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a priority. You know, when it's a priority, we shouldn't be here.
No, I didn't say that it's come to the level that we are impatient to become this level, you know. But now, yes, the people they are caring. The
Absolutely.
People, but not on the high level that we are.
Absolutely. This is my opening statement. Improvement, but not to the level that we are expecting.
But before they don't care about it. But now it's a start to move because I'm working with different journalists.
Now I'm in total agreement with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, welcome.
Okay. The other thing is, so now we have thousands and thousands and thousands of media products. Remember exposure, perception, retention. Remember level of attention, different, remember mood. And these are things that's happening to us every day. In addition, of course, to your surroundings, your intrapersonal communication, in addition to the interpersonal communication you do with others, with us, this is interpersonal, your intrapersonal communication that is going on. So there are a lot of variables affecting the process itself. Okay. Audience memory is short. Yes? True, false? Do we have short memory? Like fish? Well, maybe. A fish. I need to do research to make sure that fish has no memory. We all have short memory. If I ask you what kind of media products you consume 13 days ago, would you be able to answer me? Yes. Okay, what kind of media products you consumed 13 years ago? 13 days ago.
13 days ago?
Yeah.
Social media.
Yeah. But in addition, what kind of articles you have read in the social media?
I mainly access the Deutsche Welle. I mainly access the Deutsche Welle.
No, I didn't say what channel. I said what kind of content you consume.
Random political articles and environmental based ones.
Very good. Excellent. Well, lovely. But this is not the answer to my question. My question is to name the content. Would you be able to name the content for us?
Not specifically, no.
Thank you very much. Short memory. Okay, so we all have short memory. I mean, of course, Waleed doesn't have short memory, but I do. Okay. I'm just like a fish, a big fish. Think of me as a big fish here. Okay. Audience, again, we talked about selective perception, selective retention is different and very important. That this is our really mudmak. Things are converged together here in our mind. Now we talk the message. Media message on climate change is not effective. Do you agree or disagree or you don't know? You agree? Because if yes, we will remember because we selected this message to consume it and we perceive it and we retain it. You know, things that we like, there is a server here. If you server here in this laptop, yes. Connected to the internet, we have a server here. The server is putting things that we don't like out of the thousands and thousands of products, trash it, okay? But things we like, we retain, we keep. We remember to keep the things that we like. That's why sometimes when you speak to older people, like your grandfather, grandmother, and ask them about what kind of things they remember in the old days. They remember their weddings, for example, and will describe it in detail because they asked their server to keep it. But things of political matters that they don't care about, when did it happen? So things that we don't like, we trash. Over here, media message on climate is not effective. If it's effective, so over here, people who are designing the messages, they need to conduct research. And research is very important. Different kinds of research has to do with media message. The message is not something that we create, it sounds good, it's short and clear, maybe effective, but we have to test the message, okay? We need to do focus groups to test the message. And we measure if people of the target audience are affected by this message. And this research should be a continuum. Continuum, meaning that every time we design a message, we need to test it. People make a mistake that when they design a message, they think it's the group who designed the message. They think it's good, okay, let's air it. Wrong, because most likely the target audience are not going to have the same taste and background and frame of reference and experience like you. Okay, so we need to test the message. Testing the message are so many types of research. We can discuss media research if you would like. But there are so many methodologies that we usually conduct to test the message. Okay, media message on climate change is not clear. It's very confusing. Why? Because people would like to bring a lot of things in a pill. All the ingredients, they want to put it in a pill so that, you know, we cover this thing, we cover this part, and we cover this part. So it's confusing. It's not clear. So make the message simple and make it clear. This is going to reach everybody, okay? And of course, this has to do with research. What kind of target audience, what kind of people, what kind of level of education, what kind of position, are they decision makers, are they students? And you need to test the message. Availability of the message does not mean it is accessible. Many things are available, and many things are not accessible. The availability, there are thousands of channels, okay? But every time you make, you know what's rating research? Rating research is the percentage of people or households watching or listening to a program in a specific time at a specific market place. Percentage of people or household watching specific channel or listening to a specific channel in a specific market. We call it hot pot poor. Can you say it with me? Hot pot poor. Hot pot poor. Hot pot poor. Hot pot poor. Hot is household using television. Pot is people using television. There is a difference between households and people. You watch television in the coffee shop, it's not a household. You're watching television in your hotel, it's not a household. Hot pot poor, and people using radio. All of these are research methods that we conduct to make sure that this message is accessible. We measure it. People are watching now. People are listening to this message now. Okay? Very important. Forms of content of message is not appealing. Okay, what kind of appeals in a message? What kind of appeals? There are major appeals, minor appeals, and modifiers. Major appeals. What kind of appeals? Major appeals. Target, you know, using adventure. There are so many appeals. There is personality, sex appeal is an appeal. And then situation, using comedy is a major appeal. And then minor appeals and modifiers, things that we usually put in the message to make it more tasty, like colors, graphics, music, okay? Very important. Scheduling programming of a message is not proper. Right, wrong, I don't know. Scheduling or programming. When we do programming, what's programming? Programming is knowing what kind of people watching what kind of a program at what time. We talked about rating research. There's something called share research. Share is the share of the network of audience in a specific market. And this is going to happen after establishing, different. I'm talking about this country, so I should really talk about wider press. But share research is one of the indicators that it tells us about, how to schedule. And in programming and scheduling, you sit in a room like this, and you have all the networks, of the radio networks or television networks, and you know the kind of program, and you know what kind of programs that are offering, whether this through infotainment. You know infotainment? You know the concept of infotainment? Infotainment is, if I tell you directly, do this or not to do this, most likely you're going to reject the message. You smoke, right? You smoke or you don't smoke?
I do smoke.
You do smoke. Thank you very much. If I tell you smoke, don't smoke, you're going to quit smoking?
I will ask why.
Thank you very much. So now it's going to be a debate. But if I present through an infotainment, meaning I'm providing him with information about the damage smoke will do to him and his lungs in a program that he likes. And every time he's watching this through the infotainment, different approaches is going to affect him covertly. I'm working on him covertly, internally. After 1 month, he's going to quit smoking. So a lot of this are being introduced in Egyptian soap operas now. A lot of concepts that we cannot talk to the public directly about it. We talk to the public through infotainment. Edutainment is educating the public through entertainment. Infotainment is providing information through entertainment. And because the model of media and development is being shaped now. Who's watching, who's watching, in the 60s and early 70s, there are wonderful experts in the world that talked about media and national development and media and sustainable development. There are wonderful people and a lot of theories about this. But who is really watching national campaigns through the media all the time? Nobody. And there were some examples in the past that where governments start really focusing on broadcasting national campaigns when people start quitting and going to entertainment. So it is the age of entertainment and people entertaining themselves to death. You like entertainment? Everybody likes entertainment. Okay. So we use the media for information, right? We use the media for education. We use the media for entertainment. We use the media for wasting time. We use the media to escape from reality. So how come you, as experts, utilize this using the media concepts to influence the public and to mobilize them to act on climate change? You need to think, not individually, but in groups. Because ideas are very difficult to get, but also difficult to protect. So you need to work as a group and work with ideas These ideas could be presented in a PSA, for example. Could be one idea, one great idea could make a tremendous change. Okay? So over here, I need to know who's watching what when. So I will program and schedule the message that most likely affect most of the people that are defined as target audience. And also the people who most likely act as general audience. They came to this station or article by chance. Because people are changing the channel all the time. Do you change the channel all the time? Yes? No? You don't watch television. Okay. You too. You too. We went together through the elevator. We had an experience today. We shared an experience. I'm going to tell later on. Yes, of course. Of course. Please do. Microphone, please. I went through with Dr. Hani through, would you like to tell the story or tell the story?
No, you tell.
Okay, I met him by chance today. He was running after the elevator. So I was going to the elevator. I said, why are you running? Why this guy is running after the elevator? He said, because the elevator is going to leave. So we stepped in. I said, the elevator is not going to leave, but the elevator in the hotel. It's a very old elevator. But most likely it's going to fall. So after we came to the ground floor, I opened the door and I said, Alhamdulillah, salama. As if yani born and réveillé. Finally, we made it safely to the ground floor. It was
Thank
good to meet you.
Much. It's a very interesting topic for me. I mean, as somebody coming from engineering background, it's very inspiring to hear this speech. I just have one question, because most of what you said is based on, yes, of course, you are talking about the media in general, but in the background, I feel you are focusing more on a TV, in reaching people, in delivering information, etc. But I personally feel that TV is for you, for myself, at a certain time, was the main source of information and the most attractive type of media to reach the audience. Today, I can tell you it's not. It's not. These people in that age, they don't get their information from the TV anymore, or most of their information on TV. I will not be surprised if the majority in the room, they said we don't watch TV. Because the internet, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram is reachable for these guys who are busy.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I'm not debating.
More busy than our time, either with work or with entertainment, with other things. So they select what to watch in the time they have. I mean, so it's not the same concept that we deliver. No, they select today. So it's a completely different concept that they follow today.
Absolutely.
That's why I just wanted to intervene.
I agree.
What's your feedback on this?
Okay.
Thank you.
I totally agree. But when I design a message, I design a message for the public, not for them. If I design a message for them, I will use most likely social media. But if I design the message for the public, television remains the most powerful medium. And why I'm selecting television and radio? Because I'm the director of the Adham Center for Television and Digital Journalism. That's all. But if you want me to speak about print, I can speak about print. But it's not the core. When we design a message for the public, we need to reach people in millions. I was talking to Peter yesterday about a country of 93 million with a circulation of newspapers less than 3 million copies. So we can't reach 90 million through 3 million copies. But we can reach through a popular program 60 million people. So that's why we are concentrating on television then. Microphone, please.
When you said that you need to insert the message through activities that people like, that people tune to in certain times, I believe that this idea is applicable to all sorts of media.
That's
You can
true.
do that in
True.
radio, you can do that in Facebook, you can do that in Twitter, you can
True.
do it anywhere, basically. So the message, I appreciate that you're saying it from a television point of view, but I believe it's applicable everywhere.
That's true.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, but you know, we need to remember, you and I,
Yeah.
always, when we design the message, whether this message using infotainment or edutainment or whatever, what kind of audience we are after, what kind of audience we would like to influence. Because if we treat all audience with different age groups, with different backgrounds, as the same, we're making a big mistake. And we're wasting time and money. And this is big money, by the way. Big money for production, big money for transmission. Okay. So we are in agreement. How come? We need to disagree. Good ideas coming from disagreements. You know, we don't have to agree on everything. Okay. I disagree with you. I'm just kidding. Anyway. Anyway. Designing the message for specific audience is required. So this is the last point, what you have mentioned. Okay. Media coverage of climate change is conditioned by international communication systems. Of course, international communication systems. Now we have global media. Global media. Global media affecting us? Do you consume media? You know, the mainstream media. The global media actually influence regional media and local media. And that's why the agenda is somehow, when you see what's really happening, it's coming through the global media to local media. Unless it's something that is really big and the media, local media is covering it by itself. But again, to cover something has to do with climate change. And to send correspondents or reporters to cover it, this is big money. That's why many of the offices for the local media in many of the developing world closed down. Okay? So there are dependency, some sort of dependency in global media and mainstream media, global media and the mainstream media, to consume information about the climate change. On the other hand, climate change coverage is itself contributing to the global flow of communication, illustrating both globalization and regionalization of the media and the role of the news media as a risk of. Very interesting. So, in a way, also the internationalization and the regionalization, because of this particular issue, we need to look at it. Media coverage of climate change, along with other global issues like AIDS and or poverty, a lot of things, by the way. When you say AIDS in Africa, it's not a problem of a specific country. Why? Because of global media. Automatically, it's a global problem. It's a global problem. A lot of the problems, we see it in a country is not really limited to this country. It's becoming a global problem. It's a concern of all the people. So, of course, climate change is one of them. And there is, of course, difference between, sorry, I didn't explain the public opinion and public sphere. You know what's the difference between public opinion and public sphere? Public opinion is tailored to specific, if the government would like very much to mobilize people with accordance to a specific issue, this is again has to do with public opinion. But public sphere is much more bigger than public opinion. Public opinion is just part of it, but public sphere. So climate change should be within the concern of public sphere. Not only public opinion, but public opinion with regard to an issue, it's ups and downs. You know what you have now, you forget about it tomorrow, because we have short what? Short memory. Okay, so over here, very interesting stuff that we need to look at. And while national public spheres serve as intermediaries between the public and the different political institutions, there are no immediate political counterparts to the globalized public sphere. So we have a public sphere in this country, but we have also global public sphere. So public sphere in this country, we have a reference for the political institutions over here. But do we have political institutions governing or influencing the global public sphere? Interesting. So, interesting. We need to think about this. A globalized public sphere is detached from the political system, although transnational discussions may create, this is, by the way, it's a transnational discussion. If we broadcast this, and I hope that through the hashtag, we are with counterparts of different parts of the world, people are sharing this experience with us. We do that all the time. Now, so transnational, transborder is a key. Once you put something on the internet, it's transnational, transborder. All kinds of satellite broadcasts that you watch, it is transnational, transborder. Okay? So transnational, transborder meaning people accessing this information transnationally and transborderly and consume this information. Over here, there is a discussion that should be introduced. Discussion may create an international public opinion that feeds back into the political process on different national levels. So this discussion could affect other countries if we have agents over there. So again, the more we do it, the more we talk about it, the more we discuss it, the more we debate it, it's most likely going to spread globally. Of course, this is just a picture of Mr. Kerry. Secretary Kerry addresses delegates before signing the COP 21. We have a celebration today, or this is common in Alexandria?
No, not common. There must be something very special.
Well, thank you very much. Something very special. Well, thank you. Do I have to name it? Okay, because we're here, of course. Okay. Then this is again based on a study done in coverage of climate change during 2008 in the Middle Eastern newspaper. Are you interested to know about the Middle Eastern region? Okay, the coverage of climate change in the Middle Eastern newspaper is limited both in terms of numbers of articles and broad variations. So we haven't seen, for example, editorial priority. Climate change is not front page news. Is not. Do you have opinion that it's otherwise? No? Well, thank you very much. Okay, so we agree. Again, attribution. All articles of climate change are attributed to international news agencies. Mainstream feeding us again in the Middle East. Again, they're doing their job, and we are taking this product and consuming. Very good. But this is, again, it's a fact of research. Domestic international news, close to 3/4 of all articles mentioned climate change are dealing with international politics. So over the frame, over here is international, so they're tied up together. Okay, so the frame is international politics. So event process centered, due to the focus of international politics, press coverage is event centered rather than process centered. So it's focusing on the event, not the process itself. The process, we are gathered together. Well, but if it's the event, you are excluded. The regional perspective, there are almost no regional Middle Eastern perspectives in the news reports on climate change. Practically all articles relate to international policy, and this is again fact of this research. Human interest, no human interest stories about climate change. If there are human interest stories, we automatically associate ourselves with the story. We are part of the story. Any story that has an angle on human interest, we engage ourselves in the story, we're part of it. Any story that have no frame for us, we disengage with it. Again, the server will tell us to do what? Server, trash it. As if it didn't happen. Any story that comes to you without visuals, most likely you're going to forget about it. Right now, that's why I keep telling people that it's instant history. Once we have a camera and have a microphone, people 40 years from now, 50 years from now, they can, if they would like to record or to know what happened in this meeting, they just push a button. There is no need for somebody to tell them what happened. Okay, so instant history concept is documenting what's really happening now. Climate change, documenting what's really happening. It's instant history on records for the people to analyze, discuss, debate later on, even 50, 100 years from now. Okay, very important. This is very important for the generations to come. Graphics, and we talked about, appeals. We talked about the different kinds. Only one article for this particular research featured graphics to illustrate different national levels for CO2 emissions. Okay, we're coming very close to the end of this presentation. There is an urgent need for more informed public. Agree? On climate change. We are in total agreement. Reporting climate change is poor, but improving. Agree? Your words. Thank you very much. Efforts of climate change networks started to be recognized. Agree? Started to be. Okay, I'm creating a damage here, so thank you very much. And new media platforms are getting to be players. So new media is really new media, your words. Okay, social media networks are key agents, again, key agents, all right? Okay, now I need to play a short video for you. Yeah, so Sarah, is it going to work by itself or? Short video just to make sure that your attention is still with me, not your daydreaming about, the sea and the beaches and what you're going to do in the afternoon. Yes?
It's supposed to be 70 degrees today. It's freezing here. Speaking of global warming, we need some global warming. It's freezing.
The most criticized scene in the movie An Inconvenient Truth was showing that the combination of sea level rise and storm surge would flood the 9/11 memorial site. And people said, what a terrible exaggeration.
Hurricane Sandy slammed into New York City last night, flooding the World Trade Center site.
Storms get stronger and more destructive. Watch the water splash off the city. This is global warming.
I felt so scared. Sorry.
Despair can be paralyzing, but this to me is the most exciting new development. We're seeing a tremendous amount of positive change. The basis is there, but it's still not enough.
It's crunch time at the climate change conference in Paris.
Still some really tough negotiations going on.
What would it take to shift to renewables? I'm talking about breaking the impasse. Virtually every nation in the entire world agreed to get to zero greenhouse emissions. It is unprecedented.
It's time to put America first. That includes a promise to cancel billions in climate change spending. Our plan will end the EPA.
The next generation would be justified in looking back at us and asking, what were you thinking? Couldn't you hear what the scientists were saying? Couldn't you hear what Mother Nature was screaming at you? This movement is in the tradition of every great movement that has advanced humankind.
We're not going to recognize it. We don't want to discuss it.
It is right to save humanity. It is wrong to pollute this earth. It is right to give hope to the future generation. Don't let anybody tell you that we're going to get on rocket ships and live on Mars. This is our home.
Okay, so this is what's happening now. I see that most of you are looking at what's the damage of Irma in Florida and before Harvey in Texas. You are part of this movement. You are part of this movement that Al Gore just spoke about. Collective efforts is tremendously needed. So please keep your interest and continue your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein.
Well, thank you.
Dr. Hussein. It has been a pleasure. I myself have learned a lot. I would stop from Trump's video and say that even if climate change doesn't exist, which is of course not true, I think it's very important that we have climate and environmental conscious citizens. And if the cost of keeping the rhetoric and talking on climate change, whether it doesn't exist, is something he dislikes, I still believe it's very important to continue to build environmentally aware citizens. And from there, I would ask Peter, how was it possible that in Sweden you have climate aware citizens? What happened? You can tell us very shortly what happened so that the average Swedish citizen would be climate aware, if that is the case also.
Oh, it's a big question, but let me share some reflections. I told you the other day in Anaphora that Sweden moved from in the 50s and the 60s being the worst consumer of fossil fuel in the world, if you measure in relation to our population and in relation to GNP. We used a lot of oil for warming our houses in a cold climate, for taking care of our industry that was energy, with high energy consumption, into a situation now where we are actually in the lead, measured by these two measurements. We have hardly any fossil fuel that is used for heating, totally different. We have hardly any fossil fuel or for producing electricity. All these has been taken care of by different changes. I will come to them. We have fossil fuel, of course, for our transport sector. So that is the next area to target. But there is a realistic plan, and the economy is changing in a way that I feel hopeful that we will actually manage this goal. How was that possible? Well, it is an interplay, I would say, between, of course, awareness, although that is not the main factor here, but government policies and accountability in relation to citizens. A situation where I told you, I think in Anaphora, that the main reason for this change and for Sweden at the moment being at the lead is not climate awareness. The first time climate was used in Swedish policy documents was around 1990. Before that, no one talked about climate because we were not aware of the situation as we are now. The change came already in 1973 and further emphasized 1979 with the so-called oil crisis, when the society saw, politicians saw, industry saw, researchers saw, citizens saw that oil price raised 4 times overnight in 1973. A lot of effort was made to drastically change and get out of this dependence. That was the strength of the democracy. A combination of leadership from political parties, of course, to see where will our country be strong in the future, and also from concerned citizens. We have to address this issue. Later on, of course, the awareness of the destruction on the planet and climate has become more and more upfront on the public debate. So for me, working with journalists concerned with that, I also have to go back to the critical role of journalism in society as the 4th pillar of governance. Society in a democracy is built on the elected power, the parliament that citizens elect to make legislation, the executive power, the government that is chosen as a result of the election, and of course the judicial power that implements the laws. But then there has to be a 4th force to make sure that all these 3 are doing their jobs, are performing in a proper way. So I think Thomas Jefferson, one of the founders of the United States, once said that were it up to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspaper or newspaper without government, I would not hesitate to go for the latter. So the role of media in monitoring what the legislation, what the executive is doing is absolutely critical, of course, for achieving this result and for achieving accountability, to make sure that if government is not delivering on these issues that concern citizens, they will not be re-elected. That is the main, so to say, core of democracy. And that is where I would like to encourage you as journalists to put your focus. It doesn't help only to be concerned yourself. It's good, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help only to create awareness. We need, of course, a lot of individuals who do not throw plastic in the sea, who do not drive their cars, etc. But unless we change public policy, unless there is an efficient public transport that provide a proper alternative so that people can live their lives without using all this fossil fuel, it will not happen. Unless there are taxes introduced drastically. Do you know how much you pay for petrol in Sweden? In pounds. Just care. How much do you pay in Egypt for 1 liter of petrol? How much?
3 pounds. Yeah.
5 pounds. Okay. In Sweden, in pounds, you will pay 30 pounds.
30 pounds?
30 pounds. Maybe 29. If you have that kind of economic help to make a choice, should I take the train, should I take the car? It helps you to move in the right direction. So I would say the main challenge here is not that people are ignorant. The main challenge is, of course, how do we reach a proper democratic accountability in order to change both people's minds but also government policies. And that is the main role of media, to monitor the power, to make sure that this is actually changing. And that, I would say, is one of the main differences between Middle East and Europe at this moment. But democracy is not enough, of course. We should also be aware of that. You saw the picture of the newly elected president in the United States. He was democratically elected. So, and he was elected as a result of the new media landscape, as a result of using media to create his own popularity. Now he is heavily criticizing media, or the role of media to monitor power. He doesn't like that role. He likes media when they, so to say, infotain. Yeah. So infotainment is, of course, important when you have a good message to be able to convince. But don't confuse infotainment with journalism. Journalism is to monitor power. And what we need is, of course, to continuously build the institutions that help us to move in the right direction. Institutions like proper structure for journalists that monitor power, institutions like the international, the UN climate panel that helps countries to come together to make agreement that can move the whole system forward, institutions like the League of Arab States, the European Union, that harmonize legislation that makes countries move in the right direction, institutions like the human rights concept that makes sure that there is accountability and there is transparency, etc. So we cannot look at climate change isolated from the rest of society in order to make a clear difference. But of course, strong awareness, good messages is helpful.
Excellent. We started 10 minutes late, and we will take another 10 plus 5 minutes for more questions.
Very good.
I apologize
I have a question.
for it, but we will extend it through the day. Rania, please, and then we will take a couple of questions. So Rania, and then does anyone else have a question after?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning. I don't have so much as a question.
Can we have a microphone, please?
I don't so much have a question as a comment. One of the difficulties, in addition to everything that you stated, Doctor, about climate change communication, is we're talking about a situation that is literally horrific, that is literally terrifying. And so when we write about it in 600 words or 140 characters or give a 20-minute talk, it becomes a very difficult position, because if we are to really present the science, the real science behind climate change, then people's response will be, the situation is so bad, I can't do anything about it, because it is so bad. So then we face a difficulty, it's a very fine line when talking about climate change or most other environmental problems. How do we present it within the horror that it is, without presenting it as so bad that you can't make a difference? And without simplifying it the way that Al Gore did in his movie Inconvenient Truth. After he showed us the horror of it, he ended it with, change the light bulb in your house as the solution, which is truly embarrassing. Because it's not an issue of changing the light bulb, it's an issue of changing our entire modes of production and our society, our transportation networks. It's bigger than the light bulb. So we have a very difficult dilemma. And when you add it to our region, within our region where we face daily threats of war, of unemployment, of harassment by the mukhabarat, etc., how do we present this issue that will not affect us today, literally today or tomorrow, but will transform our lives in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, when we have a threat that could reach us tomorrow? So how do we present this? It's no longer a long-term threat, it's a short to mid-term threat within the scientific truth, without horrifying the people into a state of depression and helplessness. Within 140 characters, because now this generation no longer gets its news from newspapers and TV, but they get their news from social media. So it's a very difficult challenge that we have.
It is.
Thank you, Dr. Ramia.
If I quickly can comment on that, of course you're right. There is always a risk that we actually create chaos. But it's very clear that the present situation is not working. We can agree on that. And that the established political structures, you can say the main ideologies of the 20th century, socialism and capitalism, has both proven not to work in the way that they give people hope for the future. So we have a situation which is, of course, enormously confusing. So there is a relevant frustration or critique against the establishment. That goes both for Europe and the Middle East and United States. However, that frustration can turn either to some critique on improvement or challenge political structure to build institution, to try to refine and restore for the future, or it can lead to further destruction of the institution. We have both in Europe and the Middle East. You have one stream who is trying and building and try with strong critique to make changes, and you have another one who is basically going into authoritarian populism. What we have to do, that is to absolutely take side here. The question is not establishment or anti-establishment. We have to be critical. The question is how we use that critique into improving institutions or into barbarism. So the responsibility we have as institution, as Swedish Institute, as the American University, as you as leaders in what you are doing, is of course to formulate a constructive critique, but to build institutions. Do not jeopardize human rights. Do not jeopardize international law. Do not jeopardize international agreement. Try to find ways to improve them. Because out of barbarism and anarchy, of course, we will not be able to solve it. We will only make it worse.
Thank you. Do we have more questions?
I have a comment.
You have a comment?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I totally agree with of course, the note of Dr. Al-Masri. and of course my colleague Peter over here. But we need to understand there are significant differences between the media systems that operates in the Middle East, for example, and what's operated in Europe, with particular reference to Scandinavian countries. The theory that govern the media in the Middle East and in many developing countries are what's called the authoritarian media system, where the governments stay in power. And this is actually a theory that's governing most of the world, most countries in the world. The theory that operates in Scandinavian countries is called the social responsibility theory, and they are very unique about, you know, the media system over there. And we teach the model in our university, not only the American university, because it's such a wonderful model that they keep an eye on the power structure and they are criticizing any deviation and therefore are acting as safeguards of the public. The irony, I think, is what's happening in this part of the world. You know, there are so many revolutions, civil wars, you know, everywhere. It's not really something that I would say that journalists are having freedom to do what they are supposed to do. So in this sense, because I don't want to talk politics, but I think that it is, to some extent, the map is changing and transitional democracy is being considered, but it's going to take time. It's going to take time in Syria, it's going to take time in Iraq, it's going to take time in Libya, Yemen, and so on and so forth. So again, it is wonderful to have a social responsibility theory, which is like the air we breathe in this room, unlike the authoritarian media system, which is, you know, a kind of old model that needs to be revived. Thank you.
Let me, just for the more sake of principle, a little bit disagree with Dr. Hussein here. The difference is not between the Scandinavian social model and the more authoritarian in the Middle East. The role of media is, of course, defined on the principles laid out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, particularly Article 19 of the right to free expression. So the role of journalism as a fourth pillar of governance to monitor power is not something that we discovered in Scandinavia. That is a universal idea, more developed in the US and the Anglo-Saxon world. I agree fully with Dr. Hussein that there are clear differences, but we should not try to define the monitoring role of media as something exotic that goes on in Scandinavia. That is really the core of journalism, defined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and something we have to look into and discuss from a global concept and the principal concept of democracy. Then, of course, it's a totally different discussion how to implement it. But when it comes to your role as professionals with journalism, it's nothing different from the professional responsibility of a medical doctor. This is what you commit as a journalist: to tell the truth, to represent the citizen, to monitor power. That's why you are a journalist. Otherwise, you can go into entertainment or infotainment. That's not journalism.
Thank you, Peter. We have Dina.
Sorry for being
No.
Hello, hi,
Be
thank
my
you.
guest.
It's more of a comment, I think, than a question, or it's a comment followed by a question. But I think what's missing from this conversation is how...
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yes? I feel like I have a very loud voice, so I'm surprised. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Thank you.
So I wonder where journalistic standards and norms influence the picture. So yes, we're saying that journalists might have an obligation to monitor, journalists might have an obligation to tell the story, but the story itself is influenced by certain standards. So if I can list just 4 things off the top of my head, journalism is event-based, and you mentioned this. We write stories when there is an event. Journalism is in the business of novelty. Journalism is in the business of, we like to humanize it, and we're often driven to simplify. And similar to the point on simplification, all those things can actually do more damage to climate change communication than good. So I'm wondering if we need to be talking about how those norms and standards, those journalistic standards themselves, need to be redefined. When we're talking about climate change, it's not necessarily event-based. It's happening over a slower period of time. We might wake up one morning and find that things have changed, but we didn't have a single event to capture that. So this is a problem with our journalistic standards. How do we change it?
Questions for you, and you should finish maybe in 5 minutes if you can have the
I mean, I'm very well aware of Article 19 and you know, freedom of the press and freedom of expression and freedom of. I truly believe in it, but I believe also that our media theories. You know, I'm a media man, so I realize that in different parts of the world there are media systems that have different standards. Even in the United States, by the way, does not adapt the social responsibility theory. It adapts something called the libertarian theory of the press, which is different than the social responsibility theory, which is different than the authoritarian theory which is different than the communist theory of the press that applies everywhere. So this environment where journalists are really must perform their duties with certain standards. This has to do with variations. You know, if I have an answer to your wonderful question, I will say, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. These are duties, okay? But even in certain countries with different settings, we see that, for example, self-censorship plays a very important role in some countries in Africa and in the Middle East too. So if you ask about standards, I would say the standards, you know, it only exists when you talk about duties of a journalist, and it's listed in any textbook. But if I understand your question correctly, I think that things are changing in the world. You know, we see the American president, for example, is criticizing the media for the first time, and it's taking the media as an enemy. And the media also criticizing the president to the degree I haven't seen before. We have seen that things are happening in communists, like in Cuba, are changing. We have seen things that are happening in North Korea. We have seen things that are happening in different parts in the Middle East in this part. So these are all with unified standards, but the duties is to perform, to monitor power, to criticize, and and seek the truth. These are the duties of journalists. Journalists must seek it everywhere in any system, all right? But when I talk, maybe I talk from, you know, because of the things I have seen and experienced. I talk with specific areas, with different media systems, and I know limitations. So I don't really have expectations. And through the years, you know, I'm an old man. Through the years, I have seen, you know, they say, over expectations turn out to be frustrations. And I don't want to be frustrated. I just want to keep the hope of doing better. Thank you.
Thank you for ending up on a good note. Hussein, I think with hope we can only live. In your presentation, we have discussed raising the awareness level around issues like climate change and other things. What are the mechanisms? How to do that? We also discussed on the motivation behind this discussion and what and when and how do we think of the world around us through the media and what are the messages that we are getting and how to filter them. We also discussed a very important aspect that I believe is essential for our region here, and that's the closure of the local media versus the spread of the global media, and whether this is a trend in creating global citizens rather than local citizens who are aware of their societies and communities, because I think it's also important that every citizen is aware of where he or she is living and what can they do and how do they interact with their environment. Well, I think with this we come to an end, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. It was excellent.